3 years ago, my wife, Emily, left me and our 8-year-old twins. After losing Emily, I was at rock bottom, drowned in grief. I had no motivation to do anything and lacked the confidence to protect my children without Emily around. There was someone who stood by us, me and my children. Without this person, I don't think I could have raised my children. But now, that person has to leave my side. I still love Emily, and I should celebrate the happiness of this benefactor. Yet, I find myself deeply confused by my own feelings. During these times, it was an unexpected group of people who gave me the push I needed. My name is Liam. I'm a 35-year-old worker at a company that sells nursing care supplies. Living with my twin daughters, who are now 11 years old and in the 5th grade. Both are girls, named Anna and Leah, who look a lot like Emily. Lately, they seem to be into romance comics and often say precocious things, but they are good kids who actively help out. Emily passed away in a traffic accident 3 years ago. Emily, who had left for her usual part-time job. On the day of the accident, I had left for work earlier, and Emily had told me see you later, as she always did. But that was the last time I would hear her voice. By the time I rushed to the hospital, Emily had already passed away. I don't remember much right after Emily's death. Although I was in shock after suddenly losing Emily, I only thought about supporting the children. While I desperately arranged for the funeral and took care of the children, days seemed to pass by. I remember clearly that the children cried a lot. At the time, the children were in the 2nd grade. They were 8 years old. They were not of an age where they didn't understand anything. I think they understood that they were saying goodbye to their mother. I hugged the crying children as long as time permitted and tried to devote as much time as possible for the children. I cooked, albeit far from matching Emily, as well. My cooking wasn't very good, but the children ate it without complaint. I think they knew they could no longer eat their mother's cooking. I wanted to be as close to the children as possible, but I also had a job. Although I had some savings and the insurance had paid out, so we weren't short of money, I couldn't lose my job as a single parent. I gave it my all to work, household chores, and parenting. I didn't want my children to be financially crippled, but I also didn't want them to feel lonely. Such thoughts kept me going. But I think I reached my limit. One day, 1 month right after Emily passed away, I fell ill. Unfortunately, at that time, I had no one whom I could easily ask for help. I grew up in a single-parent household, and my father was elderly, so I couldn't ask him to take care of the children. Emily's parents, my in-laws, were dealing with my MIL's long-term illness, and my Phil was supporting her, so they couldn't take care of me or my children. Feeling dizzy and ill, I was still determined to push through because I was the only one my children had. It was at that time that Emily's younger sister, Molly, came to our aid. I heard from Mom that you're not feeling well, Liam. I bought a bunch of things. I'll make dinner for the twins, too, she said. Molly, Emily's sister, is 6 years younger than me and works as a tutor. She used to visit us often, talking with Emily and playing with my children. Emily adored her younger sister, and my children also loved her a lot. But after Emily's death, the only time I saw Molly was at the funeral. Actually, Molly had offered to help, saying I'll come and help, but I had turned her down. I was afraid of becoming dependent if I accepted help. I thought I had to do everything by myself, because from now on, it would just be me. I felt dizzy from the fever, but I tried to refuse the help. I'm fine, I can handle it. I think the fever will go down soon. Leave the kids to me, I said in a weak voice. Then, Molly said, no, rest, you need to rest. I'm worried not only about the twins, but also about you." Her angry voice reminded me of Emily. Emily often scolded me like this. It felt oddly nostalgic. Then, I was taken to bed against my will. While I was asleep, Molly prepared meals for my kids and took care of chores like laundry. Molly had come in the evening, but when I woke up, it was already past 10 p.m. She had even helped the kids with their bath and prepared for their school the next day. My children were already asleep. "Molly, I'm sorry for everything." I felt helpless. "I have to keep going for Emily's sake." I sat dejectedly on the living room couch. But suddenly, I heard the sound of cooking from the kitchen. Turning towards the kitchen, I saw Molly, back to me, perhaps reaching for a plate. She was wearing Emily's apron. Watching Molly in the kitchen, tears started rolling down my cheeks. Perhaps it was because I was reminded once again that Emily would never be in the kitchen again. Once the tears started, they didn't stop. Thinking about it, I hadn't cried at the wake or the funeral because the children were present. I couldn't cry. This was the first time I cried since I lost Emily. I let my tears flow for a while, and when I calmed down a bit, Molly asked me to move from the couch to the dining table. When I sat down, Molly placed a steaming bowl of chicken soup in front of me. "Here you go." Prompted by Molly's voice, I clasped my hands together and said, "Thank you." This was the first time I was eating a meal cut just for me since I lost Emily. It's delicious. Ever since I lost Emily, I had lost the taste for anything I ate, but this chicken soup was delicious. As I ate, Molly casually picked up a photo from the living room. It was a photo from when we all went to Disneyland. A picture of the kids happily playing. "You've been pushing yourself too hard, haven't you?" Molly, still holding the photo, looked at me with kind eyes and said, "The kids are a handful, with work and chores. You're overdoing it." I couldn't respond to her valid point. "Am I not doing well enough?" Molly disagreed with me. "The exact opposite. You're trying too hard," the kids told me before bed. "Dad is always working so hard, but they said you looked very tired." Hearing that, I covered my face with my hands. I had made the children I should be protecting worry. "I'll help you. I live nearby. Let me help protect the kids with you." But, Molly, you have work too, right? I don't want to take up your valuable time for our family. We'll be fine." When I said that, Molly sat down across from me. "When Emily passed away, did that mean she was no longer part of your family?" "Absolutely not. Emily will always be a part of my family, a very important part of mine and the children's family." Molly nodded with a smile. "I'm glad, that's right. Then my relationship with you all hasn't changed either. Just because Emily's gone doesn't mean we say goodbye. The people who were important to Emily are also important to me." With tears in my eyes, I lowered my head. "Thank you, really, thank you." Feeling guilty, I also felt a profound sense of relief. It felt reassuring to know that I could depend on someone else, someone who would protect my children along with me. "No need for you to do everything on your own. I am here," she said. Since then, Molly has been coming to our house every 2 or 3 days and cooking meals for us. She watched the kids on my overtime days and even did the school runs. The children's smiles started to increase gradually. It gave me some breathing space and allowed me to get my emotions in order. Even after 3 years, Molly has been helping our family without fail. Although she comes over less frequently now, on off days, we often go out together, just me, the kids, and Molly. To the kids, she might feel like a much older sister. I enjoyed the relationship I had with Molly and hoped that this lifestyle would continue. However, I was soon made to realize that was wishful thinking. By my aunt's words, "There's a good marriage proposal for Molly. Why don't you meet him?" The aunt was my father's sister. She would come to visit our house about once every few months with various gifts. Usually, she brings candies the kids liked, but that day, she brought a marriage proposal for Molly. It seemed that even Molly was hearing it for the first time and looked surprised. No, I can't possibly go for an arranged date." When Molly hesitantly said this, my aunt seemed to get a little annoyed. "What are you saying? You're already 29, aren't you? If you keep looking after Liam and the kids, you'll miss your chance to get married. The kids have gotten used to living as a trio, and they probably don't need you to help them out anymore, right?" I panicked. I still wanted Molly to help out at our place. It wasn't even about the housework. I just didn't want to lose the time spent with my kids and Molly. But as I was about to say that, a picture of Emily, my deceased wife, caught my eye. It made me realize something. That I felt happy spending time with another woman in the absence of Emily. Once I realized that, I felt guilty towards Emily. I could also understand what my aunt was saying. Molly was still 29. If a good opportunity comes along, she should date and perhaps start a family. If she keeps coming to our place, I'd be restricting Molly's possibilities. So, I forced a smile and said, "Molly, don't worry about us. Why don't you go for the arranged date? You might meet someone nice." But Molly was still hesitant, but my aunt pushed forward the conversation almost forcefully. "It's settled. I'll get in touch with you about the schedule." Molly was not eager, but after being persuaded strongly by me and my aunt, she seemed to have decided to give the arranged date a try. "All right, I'll give it a shot." Hearing Molly's reply, my heart ached a bit, but I pretended not to notice. My aunt has always been proactive. Molly's arranged date was set for 2 weeks later. On the day of the arranged date, I was feeling anxious in the living room of my house. Despite having sent her off myself, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of man Molly was meeting and what they were talking about. I couldn't sit still thinking about it. The ones looking at me with cold eyes were my kids who were reading romance comics sprawled out on the sofa. "Dad, stop pacing around. Get a hold of yourself." I was taken aback by my daughter in his reprimand. Not because I was scared, but because she was just like Emily. Mom always used to say, didn't she, "Falling in love is a wonderful thing. You shouldn't lie to your own feelings." Dad, aren't you lying to your own feelings? I was flustered by the words of my daughters, Anna and Leah. "What are you talking about? I'm not doing anything like that." I noticed my voice was sounding pitiful and small. The girls put down the romance comic books they were holding and faced me. "We're in 5th grade, you know. We're not little kids anymore. We understand. You like Molly, don't you?" "What, you like? What are you girls?" I was incredibly embarrassed talking about love with my daughters, but they seemed exasperated by my reaction. "Stop treating us like kids. Some of us even have boyfriends, you know. We can talk about this stuff. Don't be so shy." I was speechless, surprised by how precocious these modern elementary school kids were. "Are you worried about us? Our mom is, well, just our mom. But we love Molly. She's been there for us when we were sad or happy. Molly can't be our mom, but we think we could make a great family with her." Listening to their conversation, I was oddly moved. I thought they were just a sloppy kid who liked romance comics. But to think they had grown up enough to say such mature things. "You girls, you've really grown up, haven't you?" I stroked their heads. But they recoiled from my touch as if trying to escape. "We told you, stop treating us like kids." I looked at my own hand hanging awkwardly in midair and gave a wry smile. But Dad, you should go. Your crush might get taken by someone else. That's right. We can stay home alone for a while, okay? You don't need to rush home. Take your time on your date. I glanced briefly at Emily's portrait, remembering her smiling face. She was always the type of person who would scold me when I was being pitiful and push me forward. The kids seemed to have taken after their strong-willed mother. They say kids grow up fast, and I guess that was exactly the case. And so, pushed forward by my kids, I rushed off to the matchmaking event. During the entire conversation with my kids, one woman kept coming to mind. It was Molly. She'd made me porridge, rushed to the kids' school events, made lunches for sports day, even sewed costumes for the school performances. Molly was always there for us. I wanted her to continue to be there. There was no one else at the matchmaking venue but Molly. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. Liam, Molly, where's your date? Molly gave a self-deprecating laugh. I told him I had someone I liked and ended it early. Wait, let me say it. I cut Molly off. I'd been dependent on her all this time, playing ignorant while knowing our feelings for each other, scared to face her. If I kept being so pitiful, I'd get scolded by my kids again. And by Emily too. I had to be the one to talk. Molly, I love you. Molly looked at me, her eyes on the brink of tears. Is that, as a sister-in-law? I met Molly's gaze. Seeing the tears in her eyes, I understood I had made her wait because of my cowardice. As a woman, I'm sorry for making you wait. It was pitiful. The kids scolded me. They said they think we could make a great family. I feel the same. Please stay with us. Our family. I'd fallen in love with you too, but there was a part of me that felt guilty, as if I was stealing the happiness that should have been my sister's, as if I was taking something that should have been hers. At that moment, I remembered Emily during her lifetime. It was when our family and Molly went camping together. Watching Molly playing with the kids, Emily had said something. I've come to know the joy of being a part of a family. I hope someday a man will appear who will protect my little sister. And if my sister and the man she loves become part of our family, I think I would be happier than anything else. Now, I believe Emily must be watching over us with a smile. I chose the person because she was the one who wanted me, my children, and my precious sister to be happy first. When I told Molly about this, she laughed through her tears and nodded in agreement. Molly knows Emily's kindness just as well. Shall we head home? I held Molly's hand as we headed home to where the children were waiting. A few months later, Molly and I got married. Our dating period was short. We have been like family to me, so we didn't need a lengthy dating period. When we told the children we were marrying, they said, "If you make Molly cry, we won't forgive you." Molly has always been like a sister to us, but now she's family. Even if you two fight, we'll always side with Molly. Hearing these words seemed to put Molly at ease. It seemed she had been anxious about whether they would accept her marrying me. I felt the same joy. I wanted to make Molly happy, and I was grateful to realize that my children felt the same way. Time passed, and then came our first wedding anniversary. Molly gave me and the children presents. Thank you. Can we open them? Of course, open them all together. Molly told us to do so with sparkling eyes, so my children and I opened the presents all at once. Mine looked like a letter. A travel voucher, perhaps, but when I opened it, there was an ultrasound photo inside. Is this, I was in complete shock. Then it seems Anna and Leah had opened their presents as well, and they let out a loud exclamation. These are baby clothes. Wait, a baby. In Anna and Lee's hands were a baby's outfit and a bib. Both the children and I were surprised and turned to look at Molly. Molly smiled softly, touched her belly, and said, "Our family will soon be growing." The children, who had been annoyingly clamoring for a younger sibling, were overjoyed. Without even knowing the baby's gender, they were already thinking about names. Watching the two of them, I gently touched Molly's belly. "Molly, thank you so much." Molly then leaned into my ear and shared a fact. "The due date, it's August 10th. In that moment, I thought of Emily. August 10th was our wedding anniversary with Emily. I think our sister is watching over this child." I nodded repeatedly to Molly's words. "I still miss Emily. But I want to keep building happiness with my family. I believe this will make Emily smile too, who is up in the sky." What did you think? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to create more content. See you in the next video. Even now I've turned 30, I sometimes dream about something. I had the same dream again tonight. I know, this is just a dream. In the dream, it happened in a high school hallway. During break time, I was goofing around with my friends. The one passing by was my rival, the only one I couldn't beat in grades or character. I'm responding to a classmate who approaches me with a gentle expression. His confident demeanor was annoying. My friend took advantage of my distraction with her and tripped me up saying, "Gotcha." As I was about to fall, I reflexively grabbed something. It was a sensation like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was soft, warm, and too big to fit in my hand. It took me a few seconds to realize what I had grabbed was her. Well, it was her boob. "I'm sorry." I apologized hurriedly, but she calmly said, "It's not worth an apology." I'm still curious about the meaning of her words. That's why I keep having this dream. I let out a small sigh as I woke up to the alarm clock. My name is David Miller, and I'm turning 30 this year. I got a job at a well-known company right after graduating from university. I was assigned to the system management department. It's a department that takes on the entire system management for the company. The work is rewarding, and I also got a beautiful girlfriend. My perfect life isn't something that just started recently. I was perfect from the moment I was born. Born into an old family, I was raised without any hardship. From the time I became aware of the world around me, I was told that I was handsome, excellent in school, athletic, and tall. Throughout elementary and middle school, I was hailed as a prodigy. It can't be helped that I misunderstood that I was highly competent because of how I was raised. In fact, I was a person with no faults. However, a turning point came when I entered high school. For the first time, I met someone who I might lose to. She is the honor student Thoroughly. She was excellent not only academically, but also athletically. The big difference between her and me was her popularity. Unlike me, who was immature in character, she was already complete. There was hardly anyone who disliked her in school. She always had a gentle expression on her face. I was not good at her. Her name was Ashley Brown. She always had her shoulder-length hair tied back in one. I still vividly remember the pleasant smell of her shampoo whenever she walked by. When I found out she was applying to the same college as me, my competitive spirit ignited like never before. The college we were aspiring to was among the most challenging. I swore to myself that I would make up for all the times I'd lost in the past right here. Swearing to myself, I hit the books like never before. I was so relentless in my studies, not allowing myself a single mistake, that my parents would worry and suggest, "How about taking a break?" Once, she spoke to me after she found out we were applying to the same college. "David, I heard you're applying to the same college. Let's do this together." I felt embarrassed when she flashed me her sparkling smile. She said she brought some candy, and she left a strawberry-flavored one on my desk before she returned to her own seat and looked out the window. There was a hint of melancholy on her side profile. I think this was about 3 days before the exam. On the day of the exam, I searched for her at the test center. Since we had all applied together from school, our candidate numbers should have been close. Proof of this was that my other friends had close candidate numbers. The seat 3 in front of me was empty. It was probably her seat. At first, I thought she was just running late. I was so concerned about her empty seat that, honestly, I couldn't concentrate on the exam. As a result, I couldn't focus on the exam and my college entrance exam ended. Of course, I passed. My desperate study for the entrance exam didn't let me down. But I felt betrayed by something more important. I never saw her again after that. She didn't show up at the graduation ceremony either. There were rumors that her father's company had been scammed and gone bankrupt. Apparently, they had left town in the dead of night, almost like they were on the run. She couldn't even think about college entrance exam. She must have noticed the situation of her family. I think the melancholy on her face as she looked out the window was because she knew that her happy student life was ending. Our paths would never cross again. I remember feeling incredibly lonely after the graduation ceremony, looking at her empty seat where no one sat. My life as a working adult has been smooth sailing. I stood head and shoulders above my peers and kept getting promoted. It felt easier than my student days, almost like a game. There was no one in the company who could compete with me. I think that's why I grew into an adult who completely took life for granted. I also got a girlfriend. Lily, known as the most beautiful woman in the office. She joined the company 2 years after me. From the moment I first saw her, I decided that she was the one for me. I wooed her on the day of the welcome party for the new employees, and we quickly started dating. I am thinking of getting married in the future, but lately, she's been pressuring me to get married, and I'm a bit taken aback. Around this time, it was decided that the company's system would be completely revamped. After a series of competitive presentations, we finally decided on who we would hire to set up our system. It was not a large corporation, but a small IT company. Though small, the company outshined its competitors in their presentation. Apparently, they have a real hotshot system engineer. The representative of the company, a man named Stanley, showed up for our first meeting. He was a rather attractive man with a cool vibe, so much so that the women in our team were quite smitten. And the guy was good at his job. During the meeting, I was constantly amazed at how fast he could think so quickly. He said he would bring the person in charge for the next meeting, and that was the end of our first encounter. I assumed the person in charge would be the ace system engineer. I was excited to meet this person. They were apparently the same age as me, 30. I was excited, feeling like I was about to meet a worthy rival after a long time. The excitement was the same kind I felt when I was competing with Ashley Brown during our college days. When I saw who was coming to the meeting that I had been waiting for, I was so surprised, I thought my jaw was going to drop. I'm the person in charge, Ashley Brown. The person who showed up at the second meeting was her, the one who disappeared on the day of our college entrance exam. There was still a resemblance, but she was not the honor student she used to be. Her very short hair was dyed silver, and there were several piercings. The calm, gentle expression that was always on her face was gone. Oh, hi Miller, in charge of system management. We greeted each other as if we were meeting for the first time. When I handed her my business card, she took it politely. I don't have a business card because I'm a contractor. I'm sorry. Apparently, she was not a full-time employee. She introduced herself as a freelance system engineer. Stanley had asked her to work at his company. The meeting went unbelievably smoothly. She presented a flawless system proposal, and I couldn't find anything to question. Above all, her explanations were concise and easy to understand, appealing to people's senses. Even the bosses who weren't familiar with system could understand everything from her explanation, so I didn't need to add anything. It was a meeting that would usually take twice as long, but it ended before we knew it. Stanley always said that shorter meetings were better. After confirming a few points about future meetings with Stanley, we called it a day. As Ashley was packing up her laptop, I gathered up my courage to speak to her. I was nervous, thinking, what if I was mistaken? "Do you remember me?" I asked. At my words, she seemed to smile a bit. "I remember. You've done well, David. I heard you were in charge of system." The last time we exchanged words was back in high school, and it felt strange to be talking to her again as adults. "What have you been up to since then? You gave up on your exam too." My words came out more accusatory than I intended. This was my only acknowledged rival. Her sudden disappearance left me feeling betrayed, and I couldn't shake that off. It was a story from more than 10 years ago. Surely she must be annoyed being blamed for something so far back. Just as I expected, she knitted her brows with a look of annoyance. It was a facial expression I'd never seen before. "What I've been up to since then is none of your business, isn't it, David? You really have no tact." I was infuriated by her dismissive tone. "What the hell? The nerve of you. I'm just worried about you." I unintentionally raised my voice. "Is something wrong, Mr. Stanley approached. I didn't know what to say. "What do you want to know, Miller? About my college situation? I couldn't go. I didn't even graduate high school. My highest level of education is middle school. Is that what you wanted to know? I don't need your concern. Don't make fun of me." She glared at me as she stated this clearly. The person I've cared about so much is a middle school dropout. I couldn't accept this reality at once. She was the only one I considered a rival. To be honest, there was even a part of me that admired her. "Don't be ridiculous, Ashley. You've hit rock bottom like that." I knew my words were childish, but all I could do was berate and belittle her. "Education, nonsense. You just have to work your way up with your abilities." Her words left me dumbfounded. I felt like I'd been hit back. It was as if my narrow-mindedness was being held up in front of me. While I was at a loss for words, she left the meeting room quickly. I could see Mr. Stanley whispering something to her. Her slender arm was briefly wrapped around Mr. Stanley's waist in response. Their natural interaction suggested that their relationship was more than just temp and employee. The Ashley Brown I knew no longer existed. In addition to feeling lonely, a strange sense of despair engulfed me. I realized that I had idealized Ashley. Meanwhile, despite my relationship with Ashley, the project was proceeding smoothly. I was gradually getting used to the fact that she was not the person I had idealized. In fact, everything went smoothly with her. She seemed to understand everything I was thinking, and she constantly met my expectations. It felt as if we had been together for many years. "Hey, are you listening to me?" Lily was pouting in dissatisfaction next to me. It seemed she had been absent-mindedly recalling something about Ashley during our cafe date on our day off. Honestly, I wasn't listening to Lily at all. "Sorry, I'm just a bit tired from work." I tried to make an innocent excuse with a smile. Lily puffed her cheeks, looking displeased. Lily, who can be a little selfish, dislikes being put in second place. She's the type that won't be satisfied unless she is the top priority. I used to find that adorable, but today it's not charming at all. Hey, about that temp girl, the shady one with silver hair. I heard she dropped out of high school, LOL. Lily chuckled with a snobbish smirk. It seemed to be rumored in office. I've even had coworkers question whether it's okay to trust the main system to a high school dropout. Each time, I had to hold back my rising anger. I never thought that my girlfriend would say the same thing. It doesn't really matter once you're in the real world, right? If you've got the talent and the skills, that's what matters, I retorted. I had no intention of defending Ashley, but it came out sounding like I was. Lily didn't like that. She didn't like that I disagreed with her opinion. What, have you been charmed by her too, David? Weren't you the one saying anyone without a college degree is trash at the company? Come to think of it, there was a time when I said something like that. Now I realize how arrogant and foolish I was. In fact, high school dropout Ashley is still a few steps ahead of me. Apparently, she even dated Stanley. She eats men up and throws them away at her assignments, LOL. I couldn't hold back my anger at Lily's contemptuous remarks. What the hell do you know about Ashley? You happily spreading such vulgar rumors, you're the worst, I snapped. Normally, I don't raise my voice. Lily was taken aback. We rarely had fights since we started dating. But I just couldn't stand it when Lily made fun of Ashley. Why do I have to be scolded? Did I say something wrong? Lily's face, teary-eyed and glaring at me, looked disgustingly ugly. She might have not meant to be bad. I probably shared the same mindset with her all along. Sorry to interrupt. Isn't it a waste of time to fight over me? Suddenly, we were surprised by Ashley's voice coming from behind. She seemed to have been working at the cafe counter. She had her hoodie up, so I didn't notice Ashley at all. Come to think of it, this cafe is near Ashley's workplace. We were the ones stepping into Ashley's territory. I just told the truth. I didn't do anything wrong. Lily glared at Ashley and, shouting, she bolted from the cafe. All I could do was watch Lily's back as she left. Abandoned in the cafe, Ashley moved over to my table, bringing his laptop with him. Isn't that your girlfriend, David? You're not going to chase her, Ashley said, without taking his eyes off his laptop screen. As she saw our quarrel, I couldn't reply immediately. As I remained silent, Ashley sighed softly. Why did you two argue like that? Well, wasn't that a harsh way to talk about Ashley? You don't know he was a top-notch student with both beauty and brains. Judging him like he's a loser, isn't that awful? I felt strangely flustered as I was being questioned. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted Lily to understand that I was arguing with her to defend Ashley. But Ashley just stared at me with cold eyes. These were not the calm, bright eyes Ashley had back in our student days. They were unbelievably cold and dark. Do you think I'm happy about what you did? She said, her voice choked with suppressed anger. How can you speak so confidently without knowing anything? That was just for show. Is flaunting your own righteousness a male trait? My homeroom teacher in high school was like that too. It's ridiculous. Ashley began to talk about her past. She pretended to be a straight-A student in order to get a scholarship. Apparently, her family fell apart during middle school, and it seemed like Ashley was the one holding the family together. Of course, going to college was out of the question. Ashley had been aiming for a special scholarship. Considering her grades, she could get a scholarship from any college. She said she wanted to escape from her home as soon as possible. Then, she was called by the homeroom teacher, who had something to discuss. She was told to give her scholarship spot to another student and take the SAT, which made her doubt her ears. The homeroom teacher was smiling, satisfied with his decision. He didn't even notice Ashley, who was in despair right in front of him. Being forced to take the SAT, Ashley worked harder than ever. But all that effort was in vain, as her family had to run away in the middle of the night due to financial difficulties. There was no way she could take the SAT under such circumstances. Hard work pays off, that's the word of those who were rewarded for their efforts. Ashley ended her story with this line. "That's why, David, I get annoyed when I see you. You've been blessed since high school and you shine. Honestly, I didn't want to meet you." She slammed her laptop shut, crumpled up the 2 checks, and with a thin smile, Ashley left the cafe after quickly settling the bill, leaving me dumbfounded and at a loss for words. Listening to Ashley's footsteps, I wondered what I did wrong. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like denying my own life. But that would just make me feel miserable. I downed my cold coffee in one gulp. Ever since running into Ashley on a day off at a cafe, her demeanor became even more businesslike than before. I can tell from her attitude that she wants to get this job done and cut ties with me as quickly as possible. Even though I was hurt by her attitude, we carried on with our work in a businesslike manner. Mr. Stanley started to accompany her to meetings that she used to attend alone. There was no chance to speak with her one-on-one anymore. I could tell she was avoiding me completely. Her attitude began to irritate me, and I found it harder to concentrate on my work. To make matters worse, I reached my limit when I saw the two of them getting along so well during meetings. I heard rumors that they've broken up. But even then, seeing her put complete trust in Mr. Stanley stoked my jealousy, and I couldn't stop it. That's when I made a big mistake. It was a communication error about a system specification change. Distracted by the two of them, I made a beginner's mistake. Even though it was a beginner's mistake, a communication error about specification changes could be fatal. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the specification changes during our last meeting. I realized my mistake when I was shown the developed system. As soon as I realized it, I broke out in a cold sweat and my heart began to pound. Mr. Stanley's expression changed quickly when he heard what I said. Even if there's some leeway in the schedule, specification changes are challenging. What do you mean by that at this late stage? Specification changes now. Mr. Stanley, who is always calm, raised his voice. I've been watching my team build this up. I guess it's no surprise that the words at this point are slipping out of my mouth. I bowed my head and apologized many times. We still have some leeway in the schedule, so it should be fine. Please let me check the details of the specification changes. Ashley controlled Mr. Stanley, who had changed color, and said in a quiet voice. I think she tried to prevent my mistake from being known to other colleagues. Ashley laughed a little and said, "We can do it." In the end, all we got was a reply that the delivery date would be just in time. Ashley said, "Don't worry," as she passed me, who couldn't hide my upset at making my first mistake since becoming a working adult. Just before the delivery date, I brought some gifts and went to Ashley's company. The lights were still bright even after work hours. When I rang the doorbell, Mr. Stanley answered. When I handed over the gifts, he smiled happily and said, "Thank you. We've received some gifts." When he called out to the company, men with unshaven faces appeared one after another and swarmed around the bag of gifts. I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. To me, who bowed my head, Mr. Stanley said, "It's okay," and smiled. Thanks to Ashley's full support, I think we can make it in time. I heard that Ashley, who took on the specification changes, was blamed by other employees when she brought the changes back to the company. There was probably a criticism, saying, "Now you decide to take on such a reckless task." It was Ashley herself who silenced them. She bowed his head and asked for their support, assuring them that she would follow through on everything and take full responsibility. Ashley is a contract worker. She navigates this industry on her own. She hardly ever fawns over others or rallies on them. And yet, she bowed her head deeply and asked for cooperation. The office quieted down in an instant. Making Ashley bow like that, "David, I'd like you to tell me what kind of relationship you and Ashley have." Stanley, still smiling, spoke those words, but his eyes weren't smiling. I was a little taken aback by his serious gaze. "Well, I got rejected by Ashley. She told me she had someone she's liked since her school days and can't forget him." As he told me this while picking up a sandwich from the catering, I thought my heart was going to stop. "Oh, you went to the same school as Ashley, right? Do you know what kind of guy she liked? She mentioned they were supposed to go to the same college." His teasing made me sit up straighter. I realized he was pushing me forward. She was talking about me." I responded lightly, and Stanley gave me a playful punch in the chest. Pointing to a door in the back, he informed me, "She's napping." Hearing his words, I ran toward the door at the back. Without knocking, I opened the door to find Ashley, sleeping soundly on the couch. The sound of the door closing made her eyelids twitch slightly. "Shut up." Ashley's voice was scratchy. She seemed even smaller than when I saw her last time. "Ashley, wake up. I have something to ask you." I knelt down near the couch where Ashley was sleeping. She seemed to wake up all at once when she heard my voice. Jumping up, she looked around. Why, David. Pulling her blanket up to her chest, she looked at me, unable to hide her surprise. "Stanley told me, who's this person you can't forget?" Her face went white at my words, and she glared at the door. Probably glaring at Stanley in the other room. Her face turned red in no time at all. I looked into her eyes and asked again. She just blushed and didn't answer. "I heard you were supposed to take the same college entrance exams." The next moment, I felt an impact on my face. It took me a few seconds to realize that she'd thrown a cushion at my face. I've forgotten about such old memories. The sight of a fuming Ashley, her face bright red, is unbearably adorable. Usually, she's full of self-assuredness, but right now, she looks just a little bit younger and flustered. I feel closer to the Ashley I know. That night, I was dumped by Lily. "It's your responsibility to pick me up, Ashley." Tisk. She clicks her tongue, looking at me after my slightly crafty remark. I wait silently for her to speak. Finally, she opens her mouth after the long silence. Ashley's feelings are now completely laid bare. "If you were dumped, I guess it can't be helped. If you behave, I'll take you in." I think there must be an unbreakable bond between her and me. If only we had just told each other we loved each other back when we were students. I am amazed at how far around we've come. From now on, I want to spend my life with her. I want to take my time hearing about her life when I wasn't around. "So, when's the wedding?" I tease Ashley, riding on the wave of excitement, and she gives me an exasperated look. "For now, make sure you propose properly once the job is done." The moment her expression shifts from exasperation to a full smile, my life changes color completely. I want to promise her a life happier than anyone else in the world. I truly feel that from the bottom of my heart. She gets up from the sofa and returns to her desk, immediately resuming work. I sit next to her, trying to help out as much as I can. There's a bug that keeps occurring here, I explain, pointing at the source code displayed on her computer. Her fingers, writing out the code for review, hesitate for a moment. What if we do this? Oh, I was thinking the same. Ashley quickly begins to refactor the program. I am in awe of her technique. David, you're pretty talented. Makes it easy to work with you. We're a great team. Looking at the system now running smoothly, she smiles joyfully. It was just like being back in our student days. The classmate who was the only one who could shake my feelings since high school soon became my wife. My name's Keith Johnson, turning 42 this year. I graduated college and immediately started working at a trading company, but I couldn't adjust to it at all. Now, I'm working at a coffee shop run by my uncle. After 12 years of service at the trading company, I lived somewhat of a jobless life. I lost interest in everything, even social interactions became a dread. My lifestyle could be easily described as reclusive. The person who brought me out of this was my uncle. A man so obsessed with coffee that he opened up his own specialty shop. In the beginning, I started helping out in the shop somewhat aimlessly, but I soon found myself increasingly captivated by the allure of coffee. Looking back, I'm convinced that this was my uncle's strategy. I'm naturally timid, not good at interacting with people. I was introverted, even shy. It's embarrassing to admit, but I've never had a girlfriend, even at the age of 42. I need to set the record straight, though, there's a reason for this. I was raised in a predominantly female household. My father passed away early due to illness. Living with my mother and two assertive sisters, and on top of that, there are even more assertive younger sisters. My place at home was minute, to say the least. Growing up surrounded by strong women, I developed a kind of fear and respect for women. I grew into a man too intimidated to approach women. I'm okay with the regulars at the shop, like the older women, but that's about it. Even the local elementary school girl, Emma, calls me Keith casually. That proves how low-key I am. My uncle's coffee shop attracts coffee lovers who gather almost daily. Many of them are even more knowledgeable than me, so I have a lot to learn. I can't do without a notebook at work. I jot down everything I notice or have been taught, so I don't forget. My uncle calls it secret notebook. While I was checking new coffee beans with my notebook in hand, the doorbell rang with a jingle. Excuse me, hello. Spotting me, he cheerfully greets me, deftly maneuvering his wheelchair closer to the counter. He smoothly transfers from his wheelchair to the stool at the counter using only his arm strength. As always, he does it with ease. His name is Alex Miller, a regular at the shop and a wheelchair user. When we first met, I didn't know how to act. Should I help him? If so, how should I assist him? All I could do was fret. As I stood there worrying, Alex, just like today, smoothly sat down at the counter and laughed. Don't look at me like I'm performing a circus act. From the day we met, Alex and I became good friends. Alex, a coffee lover who frequents this shop, is a treasure trove of knowledge for me. Eager to learn everything, I listen to Alex share his knowledge. Despite being best friends, Alex is only 28 this year. He's 14 years younger than me. And yet, Alex seems far more mature than me. I feel like he's experienced a much denser life than mine. Despite probably having had difficulties that he couldn't share with anyone, Alex was always cheerful. He's the kind of guy who laughs off the fact that I quit my job and stayed home for a few years. Currently, Alex is working as a translator from home and often visits the shop to take a break. He often works at the counter with his laptop until closing time. Many of our regular customers are also fans of Alex. Alex is ridiculously handsome. And he's so polished it's somewhat intimidating. I once went shopping with him for clothes. At that time, the outfit that Alex had chosen for me has now become my go-to for important events, just waiting for its moment to shine. But even someone as flawless as Alex has a weakness. Alex has a twin sister. It seems that he simply can't stand up to her. I've been to Alex's house a few times. I've met his mom, but I've never met his sister. I heard some somewhat scary rumors from our regular customers around the same age at the shop. The most common rumor is that she used to be a punk. I didn't ask Alex directly, but I heard this from our regular customers and the clerk. As someone who's not good at women, assertive women are my worst nightmare. I swore to myself that I would definitely keep my distance. Who would have thought that such a turn of events was waiting for me? That day, after working at the shop until closing time, I drove Alex home. His home is on the way, so it is no big deal to drive him home. I ran into Alex's mother, Marianne, who had just come back from her part-time job, at the entrance. It had been a while since I saw her last, and Marianne has a strikingly beautiful face. As we were making small talk, Marianne suddenly clapped her hands together as if she had an idea. Then she said to me, "Keith, would you like to go on a blind date?" I was flabbergasted at the sudden proposal of a blind date. But Marianne, with a grin on her face, moved the conversation forward. Basically, she was suggesting that I go on a blind date with the rumored sister. The ex-delinquent almost slipped out of my mouth, but I managed to hold it back. Alex said, "That's a great idea." Surrounded by the parent and child, I felt cornered with no way out. She's a bit older, but I think a gentle guy like you would be perfect for Evelyn. That was the first time I learned her name. Apparently, she's currently living alone and working as an office worker at a printing company in the neighboring town, Nebraska. The fact that she hasn't been around since she started working only fuels the ex-troublemaker theory. But I don't know anything about her, and shouldn't her thoughts on this matter too? Marianne smiled at my flustered response. "Everyone's a stranger on a blind date. It'll be fine." I had no rebuttal to her completely reasonable opinion. In the end, they kind of pressured me into agreeing to just meet her. Sooner is better, and the date and location were decided on the spot. Marianne was quick to set everything up before I could change my mind. The following Sunday, a somewhat fancy cafe in the middle of a park. That's where I was going to blind date Alex's sister. The weather was incredibly nice, and the park was filled with families. When I told my uncle that it was a blind date, he let me have the day off without a second thought. Alex would be there too, figuring I'd be nervous at first. I wore the outfit Alex had chosen for me and waited for them to arrive. "Keith, sorry to keep you waiting," Alex's voice called out. I turned around to see Alex in his wheelchair, smiling. Standing behind him was a woman who looked just like him, a real beauty. Upon seeing her, I was momentarily lost for words. I thought, I've never seen such a beautiful woman before. She had the same face as Alex, whom I was so used to seeing, but she was incredibly beautiful. And she looked very grumpy. Probably forced to come here by Alex. Her face seemed to be saying, "I'm not happy about this." "Oh, this is my sister, Evelyn. She's a 28-year-old office worker." Evelyn gives a small nod in response. I nod my head and mumble, "Nice to meet you." I was already nervous about this blind date. Besides, I saw such a beauty, I couldn't find the words to say. "Are you both nervous?" Alex teases. Without missing a beat, Evelyn's hand slaps the back of Alex's head. She's quick. There might be some truth to the rumor that she used to be a bit of a wild one. Don't tease people like that, Evelyn says in a slightly husky voice. For someone like me, who isn't a fan of the high-pitched voices typical of some girls, Evelyn's voice was perfect. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Alex kept the conversation flowing, and Evelyn and I responded with yes and no. That was our blind date. When Alex left, we sat in silence, and time seemed to stand still. Thank you for today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day off too. Evelyn's eyes meet mine as I begin to stutter. Feeling as though I'm being stared by her, my words trailed off. No, I should apologize. Alex and the others pushed you into this, Evelyn says, bowing her head. She seemed far removed from her wild past, which left me speechless. As I sat in stunned silence, Evelyn stood up, quickly grabbed the check, and said, "Well then," before leaving. Her brisk movements didn't give me a chance to stop her, leaving me stunned. I didn't expect to be left alone. And she even paid the bill. At least the blind date mission was accomplished. I gazed at the park, thinking that as long as we had met, Alex and the others would be satisfied. The next day, when Alex came into the shop, he asked me about what happened after he left, but there was no progress and nothing to talk about. Evelyn left before me. I said, trying not to look at Alex. He then handed me his phone. What? Call Evelyn and set up the next date. I pushed Alex's phone back, repeating, I can't do that. She seemed so unhappy, and I was sure she didn't want to see me again. I'd let her pay for the coffee even though she's 14 years younger, and I figured she must be annoyed. As we shoved phones back and forth across the counter, the doorbell rang, announcing a customer. Welcome. As a reflex, I greeted the customer with a smile and saw Evelyn with a sour look on her face. I froze for a moment. I nodded to Evelyn and moved over to Alex. What, Evelyn, are you off work today? Alex, surprised to see her out and about on a weekday. I took a day off. You see, there was a solo exhibition for Professor, but more importantly, you shouldn't be going out dressed so lightly. Evelyn responded, placing a blanket on Alex's knee. In her hand, she held a small silver oil heater. She probably brought it because she was concerned about Alex, who tends to feel unwell when it gets cold. Oh, the wood carving exhibition, right. It's next week, isn't it? Apparently, she had come to help set up the wood carving exhibition that starts next week at the community center. Evelyn, a graduate of a fine arts college, seems to have majored in wood carving. It's difficult to make a living solely from it, so she's now selling small wooden carvings as a side job. I have some of my works there too. You should check them out, Evelyn said with a light smile. Her whole demeanor changes when she smiles. She has a beauty that seems somewhat irritable when she's not smiling, but when she smiles, she looks cute. It's a softer image than I had of her during our blind date, and it's quite a pleasant surprise. Maybe this is where I need to muster up my courage. I plucked up the courage to speak to Evelyn. Thank you for the other day, Evelyn. Upon hearing my sudden address, Evelyn seemed taken aback and her shoulders shivered. Without looking at me, she answered in a small voice, "You're welcome." For some reason, I didn't feel like she disliked me. I might be conceited, but she seemed shy. "Would you like to go out sometime?" I blurted out the words before I even realized it. It seems like my desire to know more about her got the better of me. Seeing her surprised look, I pressed on. Eventually, after my plea to go out on another date, Evelyn gave in. This was the first time I had ever pleaded so earnestly with someone. Of course, this was all thanks to Alex's support. I don't think I could have invited her out on my own. Our date was set for 3 days later. The meeting time was in the evening after work. I waited for her in front of a bookstore, our designated meeting place. She arrived right on time. It wasn't as tense as the blind date, but I was feeling jittery and couldn't calm down. Well, it was my first date, and I was nervous, so she probably felt the same way. I booked a Vietnamese restaurant, keeping in mind her preferences. This was also thanks to Alex's advice. Even after we arrived and settled at the restaurant, she seemed a bit jittery. She seemed disinterested in what I was saying, and I started to feel sad. The conversation wasn't flowing, and she wasn't eating much. Despite ordering a course filled with her favorite dishes, she seemed to find dining with me very unpleasant. She must have agreed to this date reluctantly because of Alex. As I thought about this, I started to feel more and more downcast. I had mustered up all my courage, but it felt like I had swung at thin air. I'm sorry, I think I forced you into having this meal with me. As I put down my chopsticks and said this, Evelyn, who seemed surprised, looked at me. It might be the first time today that our eyes met squarely. I'm sorry too, I wasn't really paying attention. She quickly apologized. Being considered by someone younger made me feel pathetic. It must have shown on my face. She looked at me with a truly apologetic face. I promise I won't invite you out again, so please relax. Managing a smile, I relayed this to her. In response, she placed her hands together and bowed her head in front of me. I'm really sorry. I'm so distracted thinking about Alex's date. Evelyn, with her hands together and bowing as if praying to me, apologized again and again. Tonight, it seemed Alex was also going on a date with a girl. And apparently, it would be their first time going out, just two of them. Alex was undoubtedly popular. But he never had a girlfriend. He told me once that he didn't want to bother the person he liked because he often had to be mindful on dates. That's why he didn't have a girlfriend. So, this was Alex's first date. I could understand why my sister, Evelyn, was on edge. I mean, there are many obstacles, like restrooms, steps, and stuff, right? I'm just worried if Alex might mess up in front of the girl he likes. Considering this, I made a suggestion to Evelyn. Well then, let's go and secretly watch over Alex's date. Evelyn looked puzzled at my suggestion and exclaimed, huh? She probably never imagined that I would suggest such a thing. I quickly stood up with the bill in my hand. You know where they're having their date, right? Evelyn nodded affirmatively and took my hand. I had heard that she did wood carving, and her palm, full of calluses, proved that she was serious about it. I was somewhat pleased to discover this new side of her. The place where Alex and his date were was close to the restaurant where we were dining. It was an Italian restaurant, well equipped with accessibility features. I went there with Alex a few times. Peering through the large window, I could see Alex and her. People passing by gave us suspicious looks as we hid across the busy street, secretly watching them. From what we could see, there didn't seem to be any problems. He was with a cute girl, reminiscent of cotton candy. They looked like a perfect couple. I thought Evelyn's concerns were unfounded. But, as she continued to intently watch the two of them, Evelyn's expression was dead serious. At that moment, I wondered if this might be the reason for the rumors about her past as a delinquent. Hey, can I ask you something? What? I'm a bit busy right now, she replied, still focused on watching Alex. Watching over Alex in his company, Evelyn was indifferent to my questioning. Is the rumor about you being a former delinquent true? What? Are you crazy? You just asked this to me. Taken aback by my question, Evelyn unintentionally stood up and shouted. Realizing that she would be noticed by Alex and his date if she wasn't quiet, she quickly crouched down and glared at me. "I don't fully understand what delinquent means, but I am not one," she said. So, I asked her why such a rumor had spread. She puckered her lips in irritation. The reason of it all was a fight with a classmate. Back in high school, there was a girl who often bothered Alex. One day during gym class, that girl purposely blocked Alex's wheelchair with her belongings. Unable to exit the classroom, Alex attempted to get past the items but ended up toppling over with his wheelchair. When Evelyn found Alex in this state, she was livid and attacked the girl. She dragged the girl through the hallway to Alex and forced her to apologize. The girl cried loudly, refusing to acknowledge what she did. Evelyn, who dragged the girl around while she was crying out loud, later became a feared entity. That's said to be where the rumors of her being a former delinquent started. She admits that she may have gone too far, but she smiled and said she had no regrets. She probably thought that girl was trying to get Alex's attention. Evelyn said she also came to that conclusion as an adult, but she couldn't forgive it. So, the supposed ex-delinquent sister was just a sister who loved her little brother. The misunderstanding somehow made me chuckle. As I was laughing quietly, Evelyn smacked my back. "Evelyn, would you seriously consider dating me? I know I'm like an old man to you, but what do you think?" Her eyes widened in surprise at my confession, while I was crouching hidden behind the shrubs. No good. I gave it another push, and Evelyn stood up, brushing off the fallen leaves on her knee. She started walking, so I hurriedly followed her. As we walked shoulder to shoulder, Evelyn looked up at me from the corner of her eye. Then she said, "Show me that thing of yours." "Excuse me, here, now." "You showed it to Alex, but not to me." With a harsh whisper, I gulped. "Show me that, your notebook." By that, Evelyn meant my notebook where I jot down what I study about coffee. I have showed it to Alex once. Apparently, Evelyn heard about it from Alex. I wonder why she wants to see such a thing. While puzzled, I pulled the notebook out of my bag and handed it to Evelyn. Taking the notebook, Evelyn sat on the edge of a flower bed and started flipping through it. After about 5 minutes, she looked up from my notebook and smiled. "You passed." "What? What passed?" As Evelyn returned my notebook to me with a smile. I was clueless. "Looking at this notebook, I can see what kind of person you're, Kita. I can tell you're very sincere and serious." Is this what they call hot and cold? Suddenly, my heart started pounding. "So I'm sure there are many things I don't know, but please take good care of me," Evelyn said, bowing her head to me. The sudden turn of events left my mind reeling. "Does this mean you've agreed to be my girlfriend?" I couldn't help but confirm, and instantly, I felt an impact on the back of my head. It seems she still had the habit of hitting first. That day, we talked about our dreams for the future. I have a dream of becoming a barista. Evelyn had a dream of becoming a wood-carving sculptor. When it comes to talking about our dreams, we both get excited. Evelyn suggested making a competition out of who can realize their dream first. I agreed. It was a moment that I convinced myself to become a barista seriously. There exists something called barista study abroad. It's a study abroad where you intern at overseas cafes and gain professional knowledge as a barista. Half a year after starting to date Evelyn, I was in Italy. Even before me, she quit her job and started working as a wood-carving sculptor in earnest. I couldn't stand the idea of being left behind, so I decided to study abroad. Knowing that if I go abroad, we'd end up in a long-distance relationship, I expected her to stop me, but Evelyn kicked me out the door with a push on my back. I wanted her to say she would miss me a little, but her apparent relief was just like her. Yet, being cheerfully sent off made me feel like I was being brushed aside. She hardly ever reached out. After my internship ended, I kept dragging my return home and started avoiding meeting her again. I kept thinking, what if she's disappointed in me, or maybe she's not contacting because she found someone else? For half a year, another half a year, I ended up spending 2 years in Italy. I had also earned a few barista qualifications that are recognized in Japan. I could return home now, but I couldn't make up my mind. Plus, I was a little sad to leave Italy. I had been working part-time at the same long-established store where I did my internship. The chime of the doorbell rang out in the empty cafe, signaling the arrival of a customer. As I lifted my face from the coffee I was brewing, I saw an unbelievable face. It was Evelyn, who was supposed to be in Japan. She had become even more beautiful over the 2 years. With a glare fixed on me, she sat down across the counter, right in front of my eyes. "You've kept me waiting too long." Still glaring at me, as she thrust a flyer in front of my eyes. The flyer was for Evelyn's solo exhibition in New York. I realized in an instant that Evelyn had achieved her dream. "I'll treat you to a cup of coffee," I say calmly, suppressing my joy, and start working with my hands. Evelyn seemed a little displeased that I wasn't flustered as before. "Well, you'd expect some changes after spending 2 years in Italy. Smooth interaction is also necessary for a barista." Evelyn waited for her coffee with a pout on her beautiful face. I thought it ruined a good-looking face. I placed a latte with latte art in front of Evelyn. Upon seeing the latte art, Evelyn muttered, "Damn it." I almost laughed at her adorable frustration. But I was nervous too. The latte art on the latte I handed over read, "Will you marry me?" and Evelyn stirred it violently with her spoon, pretending not to see. She drank the latte in one gulp, with a look of indifference on her face. "I'll have to treat me to another 100 cups to make up for the wait." "I'll write it as many times as it takes until you're satisfied," I replied. Evelyn seemed pleased with my words and nodded. Then she whispered, "Don't forget what you just said." I got Evelyn's consent to our marriage 3 days later. When I murmured, "You fell pretty easily, didn't you?" she hit the back of my head with a surprising force. I guess she remained aggressive for the rest of her life.